The smell of hay and blood is the last thing I remember. The grunting of animals, the snap of my own bones. A life of privilege and love, reduced to a pile of white bones in a pigsty. My name is Alara Vance, and that was my ending. My new beginning was the sound of a voice I had once loved, now filled with a venom that made my soul shudder. Alara Vance, how can you be so vicious? I blinked, the world swimming into focus. I was standing in the sun-dappled courtyard of the Civic Center, the scent of magnolias heavy in the air. Before me stood Kalen Moss, his handsome face twisted in an anger I now knew was limitless. Behind him, peeking out with perfectly timed tears, was the woman who would become my executioner, Sasha Grey. The script was horrifyingly familiar. This was the day Sasha accused me of stealing her spot in the prestigious city's arts ensemble and using my father's influence as mayor to have her sent to the countryside for re-education. In my first life, I had been flustered, desperate to prove my innocence to Kalen, to assure him I wasn't the monster Sasha painted me to be. I had pleaded, and in doing so only cemented his belief in my guilt. Not this time. The memory of my tendons being severed, of my father's disgrace, of the searing pain as Kalen tore our child from my womb, it all flashed before my eyes, a silent film of agony that steeled my spine. Sasha was in the middle of her performance. Kalen, please don't yell at Alara. Maybe she didn't really steal my spot. And maybe it wasn't her who made Mayor Vance send me away. I didn't let her finish. The sound of her voice, that cloying fake sweetness, made bile rise in my throat. Stop playing the victim, I snapped, my voice colder than I ever thought possible. You didn't get in because you weren't good enough. You got sent down because you need re-education. What's wrong with that? Only by going can you be taught by the hardworking farmers. You don't want to go? That just proves your mindset is problematic. The shock on their faces was almost comical. I turned on my heel, needing to get away from the toxic aura they emitted. I had to find my parents. I had to prevent the nightmare before it began. But a hand grabbed my arm, rough and demanding. Kalen shoved me hard against the brick wall, his face inches from mine. Where do you think you're going? Feeling guilty now, huh? Apologize to Sasha right now, or I'll never forgive you for the rest of my life. A hysterical laugh almost escaped me. Never forgive me. The man who had watched me be eaten alive was threatening me with his absence. What a gift that would be. Sasha chose that moment to throw herself to the ground with a theatrical thud. Kalen, please don't. It'll only make Alara hate me more. She looked up at me, tears streaking her carefully made-up face. Alara, I'm begging you. Please have mercy. This has been my dream forever. If I miss this chance, I'll never have a future. She knocked her forehead against the pavement, a desperate, pathetic gesture that made Kalen's eyes burn with misplaced protectiveness. Alara Vance, he shouted, his voice echoing in the courtyard. I want you and your father to hold a public meeting, apologize to Sasha, and give her back the spot you stole. If you don't, I swear I'll never marry you. The absurdity of it finally broke me. I did laugh then, a short, sharp sound that held no humor. Kalen Moss, are you seriously this full of yourself? Take a look in the mirror. Who said I ever wanted to marry you? He sneered, a familiar, ugly expression. Keep acting. Go on. Didn't you tell your dad you'd marry no one but me? Dream on, sweetheart, I said. And without another second of hesitation, I drove my knee straight into his groin. He crumpled with a satisfying groan. I didn't wait to see the aftermath. I walked away, my heart hammering not with fear but with a fierce, burning triumph. The first blow had been struck. Don't come looking for me in this life, I said over my shoulder, my voice low and steady. If you do, I'll make you regret ever being born. I left them there, him wheezing on the ground, her faux concern probably already shifting to calculation, and ran all the way home. Home. The word itself was a bomb. The grand, comfortable house my father's honest work had provided. The smell of my mother's perfume and my father's pipe tobacco. I burst through the door to find them in the sitting room with two of my father's oldest friends, all of them clustered around a low table scattered with photographs. Alara, darling, my mother, Celeste, exclaimed, her face lighting up. Come. See if there's anyone you like. My father, Alistair Vance, chuckled. We didn't save and scrimp our whole lives for nothing. Your mother, us, and our old friends will help match you up. Seeing them, alive, vibrant, their faces filled with love for me, was a physical ache. The grief of losing them, of their tragic, disgraceful deaths, threatened to overwhelm me. I choked back the tears. I would not let them see my pain. I would not let them worry. I threw myself into their arms, burying my face in my mother's shoulder, inhaling her familiar scent. I held onto my father's strong hand. I had to protect them. To do that, I couldn't marry a decent, proper man. I needed a warrior. I needed a storm to fight the monsters that were coming. I took a deep, shuddering breath and pulled away, looking at the expectant faces around me. "Well?" my father prompted gently. "Any of these fine young men catch your eye? What about Kalen? We've always admired his character." The sound of his name was like a knife to my heart. My eyes welled up despite my best efforts. "Elara, sweetheart, what's wrong?" My mother's voice was instantly anxious, her hand cupping my cheek. They saw my raw emotion and immediately softened. All right, we won't pressure you," my father said, his tone soothing. I knew I had to say it. There was only one choice. The right choice. I looked my father dead in the eye, my voice clear and unwavering. "I want to marry Julian Thorne." The room went utterly silent. The kindly elders frowned, exchanging confused glances. "Julian Thorne?" one of them finally said. "Elara, you realize he's the notorious troublemaker from the military compound? Right after high school, your father had to pull strings to send him to a remote unit to toughen him up. I've heard he's wild, unpredictable." I knew what they'd heard. In my last life, I'd believed the rumors too. I'd thought Julian was nothing but a reckless, dangerous thug and had avoided him at all costs. But they didn't know. They didn't know that this so-called delinquent was the one who, in my previous life, had dug my rotting body out of that pigsty, his sobs of grief shattering the silent dawn. He'd spent every coin of his savings trying to clear my father's name, giving my family a dignified burial. And in the end, he had dragged Kalen into a burning building, dying with him in a fiery act of vengeance for me. He was the only one strong enough and loyal enough to stand against what was coming. "If it's not him," I said, my voice firm and final, "I don't want anyone. I'd rather stay single for life and dedicate myself to the nation's artistic development." My mother chuckled softly, trying to lighten the mood. "You silly child. Even if you get married, you can still serve your country." But my father was watching me closely, seeing the resolve in my eyes. He sighed, a heavy sound that held a father's concern, but also his respect. "We respect your choice, Elara," he said. "But if Julian Thorne ever does anything to hurt you, he'll have me to answer to." The first step was taken. I had chosen my protector. Now I had to find him. The next evening, after a quiet dinner where my parents watched me with a mixture of concern and curiosity, I decided to visit the new house they had prepared for me. It was a wedding gift, a beautiful, rare standalone villa with a small courtyard. In my first life, I'd never even gotten to see it finished. Kalen had insisted we live with his ailing mother, and I, eager to please, had agreed. This time it would be mine. A symbol of my new beginning. I wanted to tidy it up, to perhaps surprise Julian with it. A gesture to show I was serious about our future. I approached the villa, my heart light with a fragile hope. But as I got closer, that hope curdled into dread. The front gates were wide open. Light blazed from every window, and music I didn't recognize spilled into the quiet street. And then I heard it. Laughter. Sugary, flirtatious, and unmistakably belonging to Sasha Grey. A cold fury seized me. What was she doing here? I crept closer, my steps silent on the paved path. The living room curtains were partially open, and the sight within made my blood run cold. Dozens of color photographs were plastered shamelessly all over the walls. Photographs of Kalen and Sasha, locked in embraces, laughing into the camera. They were bright, bold, and hung with a possessive arrogance that stole my breath. My eyes darted to the glass coffee table. There lay my prized imported camera, the one I treasured so much I rarely used it. Next to it was the empty box of my only roll of expensive film. They hadn't just invaded my home, they'd violated my most cherished possessions. Inside they were a tangle of limbs on my new velvet sofa. Kalen looked smug, possessively running a hand down Sasha's arm. "From now on, this is our home," he told her, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Once we're married, you won't have to suffer in the countryside anymore. I've already pulled strings with someone in the arts ensemble. You'll be in soon." Sasha clung to him, biting her lip in that fake demure way she perfected. Kalen, you're too good to me, she cooed. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed the corner of his mouth. I've got nothing else to repay you with, so I'll give you all of me. They were so engrossed in their performance they didn't hear me approach. Rage, white-hot and blinding, consumed me. I didn't knock. I drew back my foot and kicked the half-closed door open with a crash that reverberated through the house. They scrambled apart, fumbling with buttons, their faces masks of panic and guilt. Kalen's face darkened when he saw it was me. What are you doing here? Were you following me? I let out a cold, mirthless laugh that seemed to startle him. Following you? You think you're that important? This is my house. I don't need your permission to be here. His initial shock quickly morphed into his usual arrogance. He curled his lip into a sneer. Why so hostile? Weren't you the one who was begging to marry me before? He leaned back, draping an arm over the back of the sofa as if he owned the place. Here's the deal. Sign this house over to me and maybe I'll consider marrying you. But first I'm marrying Sasha. That way she won't have to go suffer in the countryside. As for the arts ensemble spot, you can either give it up willingly or I'll have someone kick you out. Your call. His audacity was breathtaking. How could I have ever loved this man? How could I have been so blind? You disgusting pigs, I shouted, my voice trembling with fury. I grabbed a handful of their photos from the wall, the glossy paper crumpling in my fist, and hurled them toward the open door. Get out. Both of you. Get your filthy selves out of my house. Don't throw them. Sasha shrieked, scrambling off the couch. Then, with a calculated glance at Kalen, she rushed over and grabbed my wrist. With a dramatic cry, she deliberately shoved herself backward, falling hard onto the floor with a thud. Ow. That really hurt, Ilara, she whimpered, sitting on the ground and summoning fake tears. How could you be so cruel to me? It was a masterclass in manipulation. Kalen's face contorted with rage. He snatched a heavy photo frame from the wall. You vicious woman. I've spoiled you too much, he roared and swung the frame down toward my head. I raised my arm instinctively to shield myself. The world exploded in a shower of glass and searing pain. The frame shattered and sharp shards drove deep into my forearm. Blood, shockingly red, welled up and began to stream down my arm, dripping onto the pristine white tiles. Kalen froze, stunned by his own action, by the sight of the blood. For a fraction of a second I saw a flicker of the man I thought he was. A flicker of regret. He even took a half step forward, his hand reaching out as if to help. But Sasha let out a piercing, theatrical scream. My foot. I think it's broken. It hurts so much. What if I can never dance again? Kalen, help me please. The moment shattered. The guilt in Kalen's eyes vanished, replaced by a hardened resolve. He shoved me hard. I lost my balance, my injured arm flailing, and crashed to the floor amidst the broken glass. Ilara, he spat, looming over me, if you think I'll ever let you step into the Moss family again, dream on. Unless you kneel and knock your head to the floor 100 times for Sasha, it's never going to happen. And if anything happens to her leg, I'll break yours myself. With that, he scooped Sasha into his arms as if she were a precious doll and stormed out. As they passed through the doorway, Sasha turned her head over his shoulder. She shot me a triumphant, gloating smirk and silently mouthed 4 words. He's mine. You lost. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my would-be home. The pain in my arm was nothing compared to the agony that ripped through my chest. I curled into a ball on the cold, glass-strewn floor, great wrenching sobs tearing from my throat. I didn't understand. What had I done to deserve this? We had known each other for over 20 years. He had sworn he would only ever love me. Now he was gone. And I was alone, bleeding on the floor. I don't know how long I lay there, drowning in despair. But then I heard it, urgent, pounding footsteps on the path outside. The door, which Kalen had slammed shut, was pushed open. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, backlit by the dim yellow porch light. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dusty military fatigues. He seemed to have run a long way. He took in the scene in an instant. The shattered glass, the blood, me crumpled and sobbing on the floor. His eyes, dark and stormy, filled with a concern so raw it was palpable. Without a word, he shrugged out of his heavy military coat and draped it softly over my shoulders, enveloping me in a scent of leather, sweat, and crisp night air. I looked up, dazed, tears blurring my vision. The man crouched down, his face coming into focus. Ruggedly handsome with a strong jaw and eyes that held a world of intensity. It was a face both familiar and utterly new. Julian. I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. Julian Thorne? Why are you here? His brows were deeply furrowed. I heard you chose me, he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. So I jumped the wall and ran out of the base. His gaze swept over the bloody glass, the torn-down photos of Kaylin and Sasha. His jaw tightened, a muscle ticking in his cheek. The storm in his eyes turned thunderous. He did all this? Julian's voice was dangerously quiet. He had the nerve to do this and take photos with another woman too? That bastard. He promised me he'd treat you right. He stood up abruptly, his fists clenched. Son of a bitch. I swear I'm going to kill him tonight. No. The word tore from my throat, raw and desperate. I scrambled to my knees, ignoring the sharp pain in my arm. I couldn't let him go. As much as I yearned for Kaylin to suffer, Julian was a soldier. A violent assault, especially over a woman, could end his career, ruin the future he'd built. My revenge was not worth his sacrifice. Julian froze at the door, his back rigid. He misunderstood my panic. He thought I was still protecting Kaylin, still in love with him. He turned back slowly, his shoulders slumping. The fury bled out of him, replaced by a heartbreaking sadness. He clenched his jaw, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Don't be sad because of him, he said, his voice rough with emotion. He's not worth a single tear. He came back and crouched before me, his movements now gentle and deliberate. He pulled a clean, neatly folded handkerchief from his pocket and gently wiped the tears from my cheeks. His touch was calloused but infinitely careful. When his eyes fell on the deep cuts on my arm, littered with tiny glass shards, he sucked in a sharp breath. The storm returned to his gaze, darker this time. Alara, that spineless bastard. I swear I'll skin him alive. His words were violent, but his hands were those of a surgeon. Don't move, he murmured, his focus absolute. I'll clean the glass out first. If it hurts, just bite my hand. He was so careful, so tender, treating me as if I were the most precious, fragile thing in the world. I didn't bite his hand. I just watched him, mesmerized by the concentration on his face, the unexpected gentleness in this man rumored to be a wild beast. After he'd picked out the last shard, he didn't hesitate. He lifted me into his arms as if I weighed nothing and carried me to the military clinic. He bought the best ointments, argued with the medic to get the strongest painkillers, and wrote down every single care instruction in a small, battered notebook with an intensity usually reserved for mission briefings. Then he walked me home to my parents' house, not leaving my side for a second. I heard him mumbling under his breath, a low, discontented rumble. You really like him that much? What does he even have over me? I'm way better looking. Despite the pain, the heartbreak, the exhaustion, his sheer ridiculous vanity caught me off guard. A laugh, bright and unexpected, bubbled out of me. It sounded strange to my own ears. It was true. I hadn't seen him in years and somehow he'd become even more handsome. It wasn't a polished beauty like Kaylin's. It was rugged, magnetic, and utterly compelling. A faint blush heated my cheeks. The thought that I would be marrying this man in a short while made my face burn even hotter. We reached my doorstep. An awkward silence descended, heavy and charged with unspoken words. Do you want to come in for a bit? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He shoved his hands in his pockets, looking suddenly like a nervous boy. His voice when he spoke was low and dull, filled with an aching sadness I didn't understand. Kaylin said you've hated me since we were kids, he said, not meeting my eyes. He said you only chose me this time to get back at him. My heart broke for him. How long had he believed that? How long had Kaylin poisoned him against me? But I don't care, Julian continued softly, his gaze fixed on the ground. Even if this is a fake marriage, even if we get married and then divorced, I'll go along with whatever you want, Alara. He finally looked up and his eyes were shining with unshed tears. I just want you to know, as long as you're happy, I'll do anything. His Adam's apple bobbed sharply and he turned to leave, quickly wiping his eye with the back of his hand. Don't go. I rushed forward, blocking his path. He tried to turn his head away to hide his vulnerability from me, but I wouldn't let him. I reached out and placed a hand on his arm, forcing him to look at me. Julian, listen to me. I spoke clearly, slowly, pouring every ounce of my sincerity into the words. I want to marry you. Really marry you. This isn't a sham. It's not about getting married just to get divorced. I want to marry you. It has nothing to do with anyone else. I took a deep breath. And I've never hated you. Not once. That was all Kalen's manipulation. The change in him was instantaneous. It was as if someone had lit a torch inside him. The light returned to his eyes, sudden and blazing. He blinked rapidly, his breath catching in his throat. Oh, he stammered, looking utterly bewildered. Okay, I get it now. Then after a beat he added, almost as an afterthought, of course. If you like someone else, then forget it. I'll wish you both the best. There's no one else, I said firmly. The only person I like is you. I hadn't meant to shout it. The words seemed to echo in the quiet street. Julian's eyes went wide. Then a deep crimson blush spread across his face, all the way to the tips of his ears. He looked like someone had held him over a fire. It's getting late, he mumbled, suddenly unable to form a coherent sentence. You should get some rest. I have to hurry back to my unit, but I'll come back on leave to marry you. All right, I said, a smile touching my lips. I'll wait for you. I watched him walk away, his long limbs moving with a clumsy, endearing awkwardness, like a boy trying to act casual but failing spectacularly. A quiet warmth, the first I'd felt since my rebirth, bloomed in my chest. This time I hoped both of us would find happiness. The days that followed were a strange new balm. Julian returned to his base, but he called me every single day. I never realized we had so much in common. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. The wounds on my body and in my heart began to slowly heal under the steady, constant warmth of his care. Finally, the day arrived for me to report to the arts ensemble. The excitement was a fizzy, nervous energy in my veins. This was my dream, untouched by the horrors of my past life. I dressed with care, my heart light, and rode my bike as fast as I could to the ensemble's headquarters. But the moment I walked in, the receptionist gave me a look of cold pity. Miss Vance? You've been removed from the list. The world tilted. What? Why? Alleged cheating on your entrance exam, she said, not meeting my eyes. And voluntary withdrawal. Voluntary withdrawal? Ice water flooded my veins. This was Kalen's doing. And Sasha's. I stormed towards the deputy director's office, my dream crumbling around me. Just as I arrived, I saw them, Kalen walking up hand in hand with Sasha, like they owned the place. Deputy director, please take care of our sweet Sasha, Kalen was saying with a smarmy smile. If there's ever anything you need, just say the word. The deputy director, a man with slicked back hair and a lecherous gleam in his eye, lounged in his chair. No problem. No problem. Sasha's a great talent. I could tell from the moment she walked in for her audition. He was shamelessly eyeing her up and down. The second he spotted me, his tone changed completely. He sat up straight and sneered. Well, if it isn't Miss Vance, the one too good for our humble little ensemble. Weren't you headed to work at the municipal government? What? You slumming it with us now for fun? He scoffed. Mayor's daughter thinks she can cheat, pull strings, and treat us like fools. What kind of official behavior is this, huh? Let me tell you something, Miss High and Mighty. So long as I'm here, you'll never set foot in this ensemble. I rushed to explain, to defend myself, but Kalen yanked me out by my injured arm, making me wince. What are you doing here? He snapped. Didn't you already give your spot to Sasha? Get lost. You're not welcome here. His shamelessness was breathtaking. Fury flushed my cheeks. I shoved him hard. Kalen Moss. When did I ever say I cheated or gave up my spot? I earned that place with my own effort. You know how hard I've worked since I was a kid. You know how much blood, sweat, and tears I've poured into dancing. You know how badly I wanted this. Who gave you the right to make decisions for me? I was trembling, my voice rising. Look at what you've become. You used to talk about justice, about honor. Now you're nothing but a despicable, shameless, low-life scumbag. A flicker of guilt crossed his face, but it was quickly buried under a wave of defensive anger. He clung to his pathetic excuse. I owe her. I should have married her, not you. Without me, her life was miserable. She needs me. I pretended not to understand his meaning, the chilling implication that he, too, remembered more than he should. But he suddenly leaned in, his voice dropping to a cold, intimate whisper that froze the blood in my veins. "Don't act like I don't know. You were reborn too, weren't you?" I stared at him, stunned into silence. He remembered. "In our last life I married you," he whispered, his eyes glinting with a strange mix of resentment and possession. "I doted on you. Took care of you and your precious Vance family till the end of my days. So what more do you want from me now, Alara Vance? You treated me like a servant. But I already paid my debt in full. I owe you nothing. I owe your family nothing." So he was reborn, but only with fragments, with a twisted narrative where he was the victim. He had completely erased the monstrous things he had done. While I was still reeling from his confession, from the sheer cognitive dissonance of it, a sudden violent force shoved me hard in the back. I lost my balance completely. The world became a terrifying blur of spinning walls and ceiling. I tumbled violently down the hard stone staircase from the 3rd floor, a scream trapped in my throat. The last thing I saw before my head cracked against the ground and darkness swallowed me was Sasha Grey, leaning over the banister, her face etched with a smug, gloating triumph. Her lips formed 2 silent, venomous words: "Go to hell." I woke to a world of pain. A sterile white ceiling. The sharp, antiseptic smell of a hospital. And a deep, throbbing agony that radiated from my right leg, encased in a heavy plaster cast and suspended from a pulley system. My mother's face swam into view above me, her eyes red raw and puffy from crying. "Alara? Oh, my baby, you're awake." My father stood in the corner, his arms folded tightly behind his back, his shoulders slumped. He let out a heavy, weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. The doctor's words were a death sentence delivered in a calm, professional tone. "The leg was broken, completely shattered. We've done what we can, but the damage is severe. Although it can be treated and will heal, you'll likely always have a limp. I'm sorry, Miss Vance. You'll probably never be able to dance again in this lifetime." Tears, hot and hopeless, streamed down my cheeks, soaking into the starched hospital pillow. Just like that, my dream, the dream I had carried through 2 lifetimes, the one thing that had been purely mine, was destroyed. Snuffed out so easily by a jealous shove. In my last life I had made it into the ensemble, but I was constantly suppressed by the deputy director, never allowed to truly perform before being forced out by pregnancy. Now I wouldn't even get that chance. Despair, black and suffocating, crashed over me. Would I ever be free from the shadows of Kaylin Moss and Sasha Grey? Was fate always this cruel, endlessly punishing the kind-hearted while rewarding the wicked? My mother clutched my hand, sobbing uncontrollably. My father remained a statue of silent grief. I didn't want to endure it anymore. I didn't want to be their victim. I took a deep, shuddering breath that hurt my ribs. "It was Sasha," I said, my voice hoarse but clear. "She pushed me. She did it on purpose. I want to press charges." My parents looked at me, first shocked, then furious. They believed me implicitly. But their fury soon turned to frustrated helplessness. "We believe you, darling, we do," my father said, his voice thick. "But we have no evidence. It's your word against hers." And with Kaylin undoubtedly backing her story. Just then the door to my room burst open. Julian stood there, drenched in sweat, his uniform disheveled as if he'd run across the entire city. His eyes were wild with panic until they landed on me, on the cast on my leg. Then they filled with a terrifying, cold fury. "Alara, Mr. and Mrs. Vance, don't worry," he said, his voice a low, controlled tremor. "I'll go find proof right now." "No, don't go." I hurriedly stopped him, my heart leaping into my throat. The thought of him confronting them, of his rage leading him to do something that would ruin his life, was unbearable. The only other person who saw it was Kaylin, and there's no way he'd testify for me. Julian's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. He turned to storm out, a man on a mission of pure vengeance. But my parents moved as one, grabbing his arms to stop him. "Jason, no," my father said, using the authority of a father and a mayor. "You have to think about the bigger picture. What did you learn in the military? That whenever something unjust happens you should just fight and kill? Is that the solution?" Julian lowered his head, the fight draining out of him, replaced by shame. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't want Alara to suffer anymore." A part of me, a dark, vengeful part, did want Julian to take care of those 2 scumbags for good. To end this. But the larger part of me, the part that had started to care for this man genuinely, knew I couldn't let him. I didn't want to lose the fragile happiness I had only just found with him. So, for now, I swallowed my anger. I would bide my time. But I swore to myself, watching the pain in Julian's eyes, that I would get it all back. Every ounce of suffering would be returned to them tenfold. And then I remembered. I remembered the way the deputy director had looked at Sasha, not with professional appreciation, but with a hungry, lecherous gleam. A plan, cold and calculating, began to form in my mind. Maybe I couldn't attack them directly yet. But maybe I could use their own weaknesses against them. Maybe I could dig a pit so deep they would fall into it themselves. Julian didn't return to his unit. He filed for extended leave and even requested a transfer. He stayed by my side constantly, a silent, brooding guardian determined not to let anything else happen to me. He read to me, brought me books, fussed over my pillows and argued with the nurses about my care. Under his fierce, attentive protection, my injuries began to heal faster than the doctors expected. The day I was finally discharged from the hospital, the military called him back. He stood at my doorstep, reluctant to leave. "I'll return as soon as I can," he promised, his hand cupping my cheek. "Even 1 minute away from you feels like torture." The raw honesty in his words made my heart flutter. I reached out, wrapped my arms around his waist and buried my face in his chest. He froze solid, every muscle in his body tensing. I could feel his heart hammering against my ear. Then he relaxed, his arms coming around me, holding me as if I were made of glass. "Oh no," he muttered into my hair, his voice strangled. "Tao, I really don't want to leave." He pulled back slightly, his face flushed a delicious shade of red. "Comrade Vance," he said, suddenly formal and utterly adorable, "can I hold you just a little longer?" I laughed, smacking him lightly on the arm. "Go. Your country needs you." He left, and the house felt emptier without his larger-than-life presence. Later, I heard from my dad that Julian had made a major contribution in the field. Some covert operation he couldn't talk about. The military was planning to promote him. I looked out my window at the clear blue sky, a genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. Choosing Julian had been the right decision. My days were starting to feel full of hope again. The wedding was only a week away. I was finally allowed to move around more freely with a cane, and I got a phone call that put me in a fantastic mood. It was time. Time to put my plan into motion. Time to dig that deep pit. If I played this right, I might be able to destroy both those scumbags in one shot. I put on a stunning new designer outfit, carefully hiding my lingering limp, and had a driver take me to the most prestigious tailor shop in the city. My wedding dress was ready for its final fitting. Just as I reached the entrance, I heard Sasha Carter's voice inside, chirping away like a spoiled bird. I couldn't help but scoff. How could Kaylin be into someone so cheap and petty? "Kaylin," she purred, "I just love these wedding outfits so much. I know we're skipping the banquet out of respect for Alara's family, but I really want to wear these for you. Just once." The old tailor looked nervous. "Miss, I'm afraid that's not possible. These were custom-made a month ago for Mayor Vance's daughter. One of a kind. We can't sell them." Kaylin slammed his hand on the counter. "You know who I am, right? If it belongs to Alara Vance, it's mine. Pack it up. And those other sets Sasha liked, wrap them all up too. Put it on Alara's tab." The tailor adjusted his glasses, looking at the two of them with clear disapproval. Frowning, I pushed the door open and rolled my eyes. "Kaylin Moss, if you like my wedding outfit so much, why don't you just wear it yourself? Now take your filthy hands off it." Kaylin's brows twitched the moment he saw me, his eyes flicking to the cane I used for support. He turned to Sasha and muttered, "How did she fall that badly? It was just one floor. What's with all the drama?" His arrogance inflated instantly. "Alara Vance, you've made trouble for Sasha over and over again. These are just peace offerings. I'm not marrying you anyway, so you won't need the wedding clothes." Sasha giggled, tracing circles on his chest. "But Alara's outfit is really pretty too. I love it. If you're making peace, can I have that one as well, sis?" I shot them both a glare of pure disgust. Two dung beetles in masks. Disgusting. Doesn't matter how fancy the covers are, trash is still trash. Sasha immediately covered her face and began sobbing dramatically. "Woohoo. I knew it. Miss Vance looks down on us working-class folks. Guess we're not good enough to wear fancy clothes like these." Then with a fake sob she plopped herself on the floor. Oh, Ilara, why'd you push me again? My foot still hasn't healed from last time. It really hurts. Kaylin's expression turned to ice. Whether you give them up or not, I'm taking them. Otherwise, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you and your precious father really are. The moment he brought up my dad, my heart clenched into a frozen knot. This was it. This was the threat from my past life. What are you trying to do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What am I doing? Kaylin sneered. Let's talk about how your dad became mayor. What gave your family the right to live such a good life? Shut up. I snapped, finding my voice. My father is the most honorable man I know. He sponsored your education, got you into school, helped you find work. You're just a heartless ingrate. A thankless wolf who bit the hand that fed him. A thankless wolf? He scoffed. All that kindness from your family? That was just brainwashing. You made me think you were good people. If it weren't for Sasha, I wouldn't have seen through it. But now I have. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper. Just wait. You and your whole family are going to pay. In blood. With that, he ripped the wedding dress from the tailor's hands and threw the bundled fabric into my face. Then he grabbed Sasha's arm and strutted out like a conquering king. Before leaving, Sasha turned to the bystanders who had gathered and shouted, Mayor Vance's daughter has no shame. Kaylin is mine now. We're getting married soon. You could strip naked in front of him and he still wouldn't look at you. I stood there, humiliated, the beautiful dress lying in the mud at my feet. A crowd of strangers surrounded me, whispering and pointing. Is that really Mayor Vance's daughter? He's so pretty. Why lower herself to being a side piece? Did you hear that? Honest, righteous Mayor Vance got to his seat stepping on corpses. His daughter must be just like him. She stole another girl's spot just to chase a man, then sent her to the countryside. No wonder she broke her leg. Serves her right. Their words, their contempt, hit harder than slaps. I'd never known public opinion could be this terrifyingly cruel. No one believed me. I couldn't explain, couldn't defend myself against the tidal wave of their judgment. All I could do was stand there, my head bowed, tears of frustration and shame dripping silently onto the cold pavement. But the more I stayed silent, the more furious the crowd became. Someone even threw a rock. It missed me, but the intent was clear. Let them rage, I thought, a coldness settling over me. The louder the storm, the better. I needed it. I needed everyone to see this. Suddenly, a warm, heavy weight fell over my shoulders. A military coat, thick and broad, wrapping me from head to toe, shielding me from their stares. Julian Thorne had come back earlier than expected. He held my battered body close against his side and shouted at the crowd, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Spreading rumors, inciting chaos. Those are crimes. Anyone who keeps talking nonsense, I'll arrest you on the spot. The moment the word arrest left his lips, the crowd's tone shifted from anger to panic. Then prove she's innocent, someone shouted bravely. Yeah, why don't people say these things about others? We're not lying. It was those two comrades who said it first. Julian raised his hand and the crowd fell silent. His calm authority was absolute. Then no one leaves. You all want the truth, right? Fine. Today I'll give you the truth. He gently helped me into a chair someone brought out, his eyes full of a heartache that mirrored my own. Ilara, I'm sorry I got here late. You've suffered so much because of it. But I promise this time I'll make things right. I bit my lip looking at the mud-stained wedding dress. Too bad our wedding outfits were taken. He reached out with his long, calloused fingers and gently wiped away my tears. I remember when you were little, he said, his voice soft. You said your biggest dream was to become a military wife and take your wedding photos in uniform. I was stunned. A ripple of pure emotion spread through my heart. He remembered the wish I'd made when I was 5 years old. Could it be, he joined the army because of me? It was like he could see straight through me. His eyes were filled with a tenderness that took my breath away. Yes, he said, answering my unspoken question. I joined the army for you. I worked hard and earned my merit so you'd see how far I've come. I lowered my head, my face burning. And I have good news too, he said with a smile. Our Special Operations Unit just completed a major mission. We captured a group of enemy agents. I was awarded a Class 2 merit, and the command approved my promotion to a regiment-level officer. His smile widened. They've also approved my transfer so I can work here in the city. Alara, from now on I'll be your personal guard. You'll never have to be scared again. Then with a mischievous gleam in his eye, he pulled something out of his bag. It was a brand new, impeccably tailored military uniform, but in a smaller, feminine cut. Look what this is, he said, his voice full of pride. Special approval from the unit. It's for Comrade Alara Vance, military spouse, to wear at her wedding. Do you like it? Through my tears I laughed and nodded hard. It's beautiful. It's perfect. Just then 2 military police officers escorted Kaylin and Sasha back toward us. They must have been caught trying to flee. Julian pointed at them, his voice ringing out clear and authoritative. They're the ones spreading lies and causing trouble. The crowd murmured in agreement. Yes, it was them. Kaylin squirmed and struggled in the officer's grip. What do you think you're doing? You think being a soldier gives you the right to arrest people? Sasha clutched her belly and whined. Be careful. I'm pregnant. Don't hurt our baby. When Kaylin saw it was Julian, he relaxed slightly, trying to appeal to an old, false camaraderie. Julian, it's you. This is all a misunderstanding. Come on, let us go. Julian let out a cold, dismissive laugh. Don't act so familiar with me. He turned to address the crowd. Let me ask you, did they or did they not steal this comrade's wedding dress? Did they or did they not tear it off her and throw her in the street? Kaylin glanced at me, clearly rattled. But Sasha grabbed his arm and cut him off, tears welling in her eyes again. That's not how it happened, comrade. He gave them to me voluntarily. He took the clothes off himself. He admitted he wronged me in the past and apologized, so I reluctantly accepted. My God, she was twisting everything with such practiced ease. I should have never held back. The crowd, confused by her performance, began to grow angry again. Unbelievable. Of course it's true. That Vance girl is disgusting. I looked at their smug faces and felt nothing but icy despair. It was time. I signaled the old tailor with a glance. He stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger. You're all wrong. It was Kaylin Moss who caused all this. He's been putting purchases under Miss Vance's name for years, always claiming it's for her or for Mayor Vance's office. He's taken plenty from us merchants along this street. We all can testify. He pointed an accusing finger at Kaylin. Now he's getting married to another woman and still wants Miss Vance to pay for everything. When she refused, they humiliated her in my shop, stripped her of her clothes and threw her onto the street. I couldn't stop them. Miss Vance, I'm sorry. I failed to protect you. Right after that, shopkeepers from all along the street came forward, one after another, speaking up for me, corroborating the story. The tide turned irrevocably. The crowd finally realized the truth. Fingers pointed at Kaylin and Sasha as curses flew. What the hell is wrong with you two? You stole from Miss Vance, used her father's name, and now you're pulling this crap? Shameless bastards. You lied, flipped the story, and made fools of us. You used us to bully her. We're sorry, Miss Vance. We were too stupid. We apologize. Under the weight of public scorn and the evidence mounting against them, Kaylin and Sasha had no choice but to bow their heads and mutter apologies. They tossed the stolen clothes onto my lap and tried to slink away. Wait. Julian's voice rang out, calm and sharp. What about the compensation? How much did you get from Miss Vance? The crowd, now firmly on my side, echoed him. That's right. You have to pay her back. Kaylin licked his lips, defeated. Who remembers all that? I've only got $200 on me. Take it or leave it. The old tailor spoke up again. Wait a second. We've kept records. He and the other shopkeepers began tallying the debts on abacuses and notepads. Within minutes they had a total, 5,000 yuan. Kaylin and Sasha emptied their pockets and could only scrape together 250. They were forced to write an IOU for the rest. Julian handed them the pen and paper himself. Kaylin, realizing there was no escape, tried one last time to bargain. Julian, come on. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? We don't need to make it this ugly. But Julian took a step back, his expression stern and unyielding. Kaylin Moss, you didn't just violate social ethics. You incited trouble, harassed a woman, disrupted public order, and committed robbery in broad daylight. On top of that, you slandered Mayor Vance for murder. His cold gaze shifted to Sasha. As for this woman, she deliberately stirred public resentment against the party and the people. Both of you have committed serious crimes against the nation and its citizens. You owe this crowd an explanation. You owe Miss Vance and Mayor Vance an explanation." He nodded to the officers. "Take them away." I watched them being led away, Sasha wailing, Kaylin pale and silent. A deep, profound satisfaction settled in my soul. Everything had gone exactly as I had planned. The pit had been dug, and they had fallen right in. The satisfaction of seeing Kaylin and Sasha led away by military police was a sweet, fleeting victory. But I knew it was far from over. People like them had a way of wriggling out of consequences, of playing on sympathies and twisting narratives. Julian's promotion and transfer were a shield, but I couldn't rely on it alone. I had to be smarter, sharper. Julian, true to his word, became my shadow. His transfer to the city's garrison was approved with startling speed, a testament to the importance of the mission he'd just completed. He found a small apartment near my parents' house and spent every free moment with me. Our days fell into a new, comforting rhythm. He'd arrive in the morning, often with fresh pastries or a book he thought I'd like. We'd talk for hours, the easy camaraderie between us deepening into something more substantial, more real. He helped me with my physical therapy, his strong hands supporting me as I learned to walk again with my cane, his encouragement a constant, gentle presence. The doctors were amazed at my progress. The bone was healing well, but the specter of the limp, the end of my dancing career, remained. I tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on the new future I was building with Julian. A week passed with no word about Kaylin or Sasha. The silence was unnerving. I knew the wheels of justice turned slowly, especially when dealing with claims that involved slandering a mayor. My father, though furious, was a stickler for procedure. He would not interfere, wanting everything done by the book to avoid any appearance of corruption. Julian tried to hide his impatience, but I could see it in the tight set of his jaw, the way his eyes would scan the street every time we went out, as if expecting an ambush. He was a man of action, and the waiting was torture for him. The call finally came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. It was from the chief of police, an old family friend. His voice was grave. "Alara, about Kaylin Moss, he's being released." The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. "Released? How? On what grounds?" "Lack of concrete evidence for the more serious charges," the chief said, sounding weary. "The theft and the public disturbance, well, we held him as long as we could." His mother, she came down to the station, made a passionate plea. It was complicated. His mother, Lillian Moss, a kind, weary woman I had once loved like my own. In my past life I'd moved into their small home to care for her. The memory of her, sick and grateful for my help, was a sharp ache. Of course she would plead for her only son. She didn't know the monster he was becoming. "Complicated," I echoed, my voice hollow. "The slander charge against your father is delicate, Alara. Without a direct, recorded threat or a witness besides yourself, it's his word against Kaylin's. Pushing it could create more political problems for your father. It was decided that release with a warning was the best course for now." A warning? For a man who had threatened to make my family pay in blood. I felt sick. "Thank you for telling me," I managed to say before hanging up. "I told Julian." His face darkened, and for a moment, I saw the dangerous, feral soldier beneath the gentle exterior. "He's out," he growled, pacing the length of the kitchen like a caged tiger. "After what he did to you. After what he said." "His mother intervened," I said softly. "She doesn't know." "She needs to know," Julian said, his voice low and fierce. "He can't hide behind her goodness forever." I didn't disagree, but the thought of shattering that sweet woman's world made my heart heavy. She had already lost so much. Meanwhile, Kaylin's release was not the triumphant return he might have hoped for. The story of his public humiliation and arrest had spread through the city like wildfire. He was a pariah. The martyr's sun, halo had tarnished into the tawdry glow of a common thief and a liar. He spent his first day of freedom in a cold, damp detention cell, the hours dragging like an eternity. The darkness and loneliness forced an introspection upon him he had long avoided. How had he fallen so far? He was the golden boy, the pride of the city, the future son-in-law of the mayor. He had everything. Samantha, Alara, beautiful, devoted Alara, had loved him with her whole heart. All the men had envied him. So how had he ended up here? Disgraced, abandoned, the object of everyone's scorn. He sat on the thin cot, his head in his hands, lost in a maze of his own making. When the iron door finally creaked open and the officer told him he was free to go, he stared in disbelief. A charge like disturbing public order, assault, slander. It could have meant years. He lit up instantly. It had to be Alara. She'd forgiven him. He must have. Of course she had. He loved him. He always had. How could she ever bear to see him suffer? He remembered how she used to pretend to be annoyed with him but would always save the best pastries for him, would mend his clothes before he even noticed they were torn. That's how it had been their whole lives. In the last life and again in this one. Sure, now he had a child on the way with Sasha, but when his emotions ran deepest, the only face that ever appeared was Alara's. Serene, graceful, and utterly irreplaceable. He realized with a stunning clarity that the only person he had ever truly loved was Alara Vance. Everything with Sasha had been about pride, about proving he could make it on his own, that someone would love him even without Alara's family's influence. He had loved seeing Alara get jealous, worried, flustered. Suddenly he missed her so badly it was a physical pain. He needed to see her right now. But first he needed to clean up, shower, get a haircut. This wasn't a release. It was his rebirth, his fresh start. He was going to make things right with Alara. Go back to how things were. He pushed open the heavy station door, squinting in the afternoon sun, expecting he didn't know what. Chance to explain. A hope. What greeted him was his mother. Her face, usually soft and kind, was a mask of grief and fury. "Kaylin," she said, her voice trembling. "Vek, vek." Two loud, sharp slaps landed across his face, stinging with the force of her disappointment. "You ungrateful bastard," she screamed, her voice breaking. "What the hell have you done? I don't have a son like you. I wish I could shove you back into my womb and strangle you with the cord." Kaylin stood there, stunned, his cheek burning. "Mom? What are you talking about? You're just like that no-good father of yours," she cried, collapsing to the ground, sobbing into her hands. "Rotten to the core." Kaylin knelt beside her, confused and hurt. "Mom, what are you talking about? My dad was a martyr, a hero. He died saving Mayor Vance, didn't he?" She glared up at him, her eyes pools of tears and a hatred he had never seen directed at him before. "That's just a story Alistair Vance made up to comfort you. He didn't want you to follow in your father's footsteps." "What are you talking about?" Kaylin shouted, his world beginning to crack at the edges. "Mom, don't say crazy things. The thing I'm most proud of in my life is my father." His mother's voice shook with a fury born of decades of pain. "Proud? That ungrateful bastard? Meeting him was the biggest curse of my life. And giving birth to a monster like you is my greatest regret." She shoved him away and stood tall, drawing on a strength he never knew she possessed. "Listen to me carefully. Your father was a rapist, a piece of human garbage." Kaylin recoiled as if struck. "No. I didn't want to date him," she continued, her voice hoarse. "So he dragged me into a cornfield and forced himself on me. I got pregnant with you and had no choice but to marry that man, that criminal." She was trembling now, the words pouring out of her like poison she'd held in for too long. "And even after all that, he never changed. He leeched off his childhood friendship with Alistair, using his name to freeload and cheat and con everyone around him. Alistair tried to help him, tried to set him straight, but he turned on him. They argued on a cliffside path. Your father pushed him." Kaylin felt the ground fall away beneath him. They both went down, hung up on a tiny tree. It was Julian's father who pulled Alistair to safety. But when he went to save your dad, that bastard stepped on him, used him as a ladder to climb up. In the end, they both fell to their deaths. Julian's father, a good man, died because of your father. She choked on her sobs, her whole body racked with the memory. Alistair never told anyone. He covered it all up so you wouldn't suffer. Heaven gave us his salary, told you it was compensation for a martyr's child. But do you deserve it? After what you've done, how are you any different from him?" Kaylin grabbed his own hair, pulling at it in agony. No, that's not true. I don't believe it. I'm a martyr's son. I'm one of the good ones. I'm not the son of a rapist. I'm not a murderer's son." "Believe what you want," she said, her voice suddenly empty, all the fight gone out of her. "But hear me now. From this day forward, I have nothing to do with you. I'm cutting you off for good. Go back to that whore if you want, but I've got no son like you. You come near me again, Kaylin, I swear I'll kill myself. She turned and walked away, leaving him kneeling on the dirty pavement, his world in ashes. He stumbled through the streets, a ghost. The whispers followed him everywhere he went. He could hear them even if they weren't said aloud. Filthy pervert. Criminal blood runs deep. He was born bad. Two-timing scumbag trash. He wrapped his jacket tightly around his face, hiding shame burning through him like a fever. He had nowhere to go but the tiny, dingy rental apartment he'd gotten for Sasha. He expected to be greeted by his delicate little lover, the woman for whom he had thrown everything away. His wife would always be Alara, but Sasha, she was his comfort, his escape. He pushed the door open. The scene that greeted him was the stuff of nightmares. Sasha was in bed, naked, tangled in the sheets with another man. And not just any man. It was Deputy Director Croft, the lecherous official from the arts ensemble. The very man Kaylin had begged for help to get Sasha her spot. A red haze descended over Kaylin's vision. You dirty little witch, he seethed, his voice a strangled rasp. Sasha stretched lazily, completely unfazed by his arrival. So what if he's gone, she said, nodding toward Croft. He got what he deserved. What are you going to do? Raise his baby? The deputy director lit a cigarette and smirked. I heard he's got some old mother too. The Vance family's been feeding them for years. You planning on caring for her in her old age too? Sasha yawned, a bored, dismissive sound. What baby? I made that up. That idiot believed anything I said. She laughed, a cruel tinkling sound. No way I'm taking care of his mom. But I am going to take every last cent I can get out of him. Kaylin felt the room spin. She was venom incarnate. She leaned over and giggled at Croft, her voice dripping with malice. Oh, and just between us, I've got a little secret. I've been reborn too. Kaylin's eyes went wide. She remembered. Yeah, last time around, she said as if discussing the weather, I told him I'd been assaulted by a bunch of thugs in the countryside. I sowed doubt between him and the Vance family until he completely turned on them. In the end, he destroyed Alara's whole family, crippled her, broke her arms and legs, even drained her heart's blood for a tonic for me. She licked her lips, a grotesque parody of pleasure. Then he ripped their baby out of her body to cook it for me. I thought he loved me like no one else ever would. She picked up a champagne flute from the bedside table and smirked. So this time I made sure to split them up early. But you know, she pouted, even in bed he'd cry out her name. Alara. Disgusting. She took a sip. But he's never going back to her now. Today's the wedding. Alara's marrying Julian Thorne. She looked at Kaylin, her eyes cold and mocking. Him. That woman never knew her place. I just touched his finger once and he acted like I was diseased, avoiding me like the plague. What an ungrateful fool. Miss Queen of Nothing, Croft sneered. You think someone like you could compare to her? Ha. A country bumpkin like you. But not me, Lily giggled, running a hand down Croft's chest. I know how to make a man feel good. Come on, let's go again. Kaylin's head buzzed like a swarm of bees. The floodgates burst open. The memories, the real memories, not the twisted fragments he'd held onto, surged into him. The basement. The knife. The blood. Lara's screams. His own hands covered in her blood, tearing the child from her womb. The pigs. The rage was instantaneous, all-consuming, blinding. He didn't think. He didn't plan. His eyes fell on a sickle leaning against the wall, left over from a failed attempt at window box gardening. He grabbed it. The world narrowed to the arc of the blade, the sound of it cutting through the air, then through flesh. There was screaming, but it sounded very far away. By the time the red haze cleared and he snapped out of his trance, the bed was a slaughterhouse, soaked in blood. The lovers had been hacked into unrecognizable chunks of meat. He stood there, breathing heavily, the bloody sickle hanging from his hand. A strange calm descended upon him. It was done. He walked calmly into the bathroom. He washed himself clean, scrubbing every inch of skin until it was raw. Then he looked in the mirror. Using the blood-streaked sickle, he carefully shaved his face. He had to look presentable for her. He had to see Alara. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and bright. The house was a whirlwind of activity. My mother fluttered around me, alternating between tears of joy and frantic adjustments to my hair. The military uniform Julian had given me hung pressed and perfect on the back of my door. It was more beautiful than any silk dress could ever be. But a deep, unshakable sense of dread had settled in my bones. My heart wouldn't stop racing. My left eyelid twitched incessantly. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the air, a current of impending chaos. Julian sensed it too. He'd stationed 2 of his most trusted men outside the house, their presence a silent, reassuring promise of protection. He himself was a rock of calm efficiency, coordinating with the vendors, checking security details, but I saw the way his eyes constantly scanned our surroundings, the way his hand never strayed too far from the sidearm he was authorized to carry. "It's just nerves, my love," my father said, squeezing my hand. He looked distinguished and proud in his best suit. "Every bride feels this way." I tried to smile to believe him, but this was more than nerves. This was the chilling certainty that a storm was about to break. The ceremony was to be held in our garden, under a canopy of blooming jasmine. Friends and family began to arrive, their smiles and laughter slowly chipping away at my anxiety. The atmosphere was filled with a genuine, joyful warmth. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe that happiness was truly within reach. Julian stood at the makeshift altar next to the officiant, resplendent in his full dress uniform. His medals gleamed in the sunlight. When his eyes found mine across the garden, the world seemed to still. The love and awe in his gaze was so potent, so unwavering, that it momentarily chased all the shadows away. This man had crossed lifetimes for me. He was my anchor. The music began. My father offered me his arm and we started our slow walk down the petal-strewn path. Every step, aided by my elegant cane, felt like a victory. I kept my eyes locked on Julian, drawing strength from him. We were halfway there when I saw one of Julian's men shift subtly, his hand going to his ear, receiving a message through his comms unit. His posture stiffened. He caught Julian's eye and gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. Julian's expression didn't change, but I saw the minute tightening around his eyes. Something was happening. The ceremony began. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves. Julian's voice was strong and clear, promising to cherish and protect me, to stand by me through any storm. My own voice trembled with emotion, but I meant every word. We were pronounced husband and wife. The garden erupted in applause and cheers. Julian leaned in, his hand cupping my face, and kissed me. It was not a chaste wedding kiss. It was a claiming, a promise, a seal on the vow we had just made. It tasted of love and hope and a fierce, desperate relief. The kiss broke and we turned to face our loved ones, smiling through our tears. The worst was over. We were married. We were safe. And then the back door to the kitchen, which led into the house, creaked open. A figure stood silhouetted in the darkness within. He stepped into the light of the garden. It was Kalen. He was clean-shaven, his hair neatly combed, wearing a suit that was slightly too small and wrinkled, as if he'd pulled it from the bottom of a drawer. But his eyes were the windows to a howling void. Bloodshot, wide, with a terrifying mix of obsession and utter madness. In his hand he held a sickle. The curved blade was dark and stained. "The doctor said this military uniform looks good on me," he murmured, his voice unervingly calm, his gaze fixed on me. "Even better than the red wedding robe we wore when we got married." The crowd fell into a stunned, horrified silence. "I'm sorry, Alara," he said, taking a step forward. The guests recoiled. I remembered what I did in our past life. I was stupid. I shouldn't have believed anyone else. He took another step. Julian moved in front of me, a solid wall of muscle and uniform, his body positioned as a shield. "Come with me," Kalen pleaded, his voice cracking. "Let's start over. I know you still love me. There's no way you'd fall for a brute like him. You only chose him because he avenged you, right?" He held up the sickle. "Well, I've killed for you too. Sasha is dead. No one's standing in our way anymore." My blood ran cold. He'd killed her. He'd finally snapped completely. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed the only thing within reach, a pair of sharp silver shears my mother had been using to trim flowers earlier. I pointed them at him, my hand shaking violently. "Get out, Kalen. Don't come near me." But he didn't even flinch. He walked right up to me, ignoring Julian completely, and pressed his palm onto the blades, slicing deep into his own skin without a hint of pain. Blood welled up and dripped onto the grass. Terrified, I dropped the shears. He seized the moment to grab me, pulling me into a crushing, possessive embrace, his bleeding hand tangling in my hair. "Let's run away, Alara," he whispered, his lips against my ear, his breath hot and frantic. "Just you and me somewhere no one knows us. We'll start fresh. We'll have so many children. We'll be the happiest people in the world. I love you, Alara. Do you know how much I love you? Let me go." I struggled with everything I had, but he was shockingly strong, fueled by his insanity. "You smell so good," he murmured, nuzzling my neck. It was the most violating touch I had ever experienced. "If you want our wedding night right here, I'm fine with that." "You're insane. This is rape, Kaylin. Don't make me regret signing the leniency petition. Your mother got on her knees and begged for it. Don't you owe her that much?" "None of that matters anymore," he shouted, his calm shattering into rage. "Nothing matters. I only want you, Alara. I love you. I want you." He pinned me down on the grass, his weight crushing me, his mad eyes boring into mine. I screamed, a raw sound of pure despair. Prick, prick. Two sharp, deafening reports rang out, impossibly loud in the tense silence. Kaylin howled like a wounded animal, his body jerking violently above me. Julian had moved faster than I could process. He hadn't drawn his sidearm. He had used his hands, delivering two precise, brutal blows that shattered both of Kaylin's arms at the elbow. Kaylin collapsed off me, writhing in agony. Julian moved like a beast unleashed. He hauled Kaylin up and then drove his fist into his face again and again with a merciless piston-like fury. It was not the disciplined strike of a soldier. It was the raw, primal vengeance of a man watching his wife be violated. And suddenly something unlocked inside me. A memory, long buried by trauma and a lie, surfaced with crystalline clarity. Years ago. Darkness. The smell of damp earth and cheap alcohol. Rough hands grabbing me, a cloth over my mouth, a chemical taste. Kidnapped. Through the haze I saw a figure. Young, furious, fearless. He moved like a storm, his fists and feet a blur, beating my captors into a pulp. He fought with a reckless, terrifying abandon. He saved me. I passed out before I saw his face. When I woke in the hospital, Kaylin was by my bedside. He said he'd found me. He said he was my hero. I believed him. I loved him for it. I never remembered what happened afterward. Kaylin had always claimed he was the one who saved me, and I, grateful and hazy, had believed him. It was the foundation of my debt to him, the reason I said yes when he begged me to marry him. But now I knew. The figure in my memory, the one who fought with that specific, wild, fearless fury, it wasn't Kaylin. It was Julian. He'd been silently protecting me for years, and I never knew. Kaylin had stolen his heroism, had built my love on a lie. At that moment, police officers, alerted by Julian's men, finally burst into the garden. The scene was chaos. Guests crying, Kaylin bleeding and broken on the ground, Julian standing over him, chest heaving, his knuckles raw and bloody. "What's going on here?" the lead officer shouted. "Who's Kaylin Moss?" I pointed a trembling finger at the man groaning on the grass. My voice, when it came out, was surprisingly steady. "It's him. He just tried to rape me. My husband saved me." I looked the officer directly in the eye. "Officer, please help us." One of the officers stepped forward, reading from a notepad. "Kaylin Moss, you are under arrest for the murder of Sasha Gray and Deputy Director Croft, and for the attempted rape of Alara Thorne. Come with us." Julian finally turned away from Kaylin and rushed to my side. He gathered me into his arms, his whole body trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice ragged against my hair. "I'm so sorry I didn't protect you in time. I should have been faster." I buried my face in his neck, inhaling his scent, leather, gunpowder, and Julian. "No," I said, my voice muffled against his skin. "You came for me. You came for me, Julian. Thank God you came." I pulled back slightly, looking up into his tormented eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you." The ghost of a smile touched his bloodied lips. His eyes, still dark with adrenaline, softened. "Then give me your heart," he whispered, his thumb stroking my cheek. "Alara, I want you to fall in love with me. The real way. I've dreamed of that day." The intensity in his gaze, the love brimming there, undimmed by the horror we had just endured, was my undoing. My eyes stung with fresh tears. I couldn't stop myself. I leaned in and gently, slowly, kissed his lips, tasting the salt of sweat and the faint copper tang of blood. It was a kiss of gratitude, of promise, of a love that was finally fully recognized. The wedding party was, understandably, cut short. But we were married. The paperwork was signed, the vows were spoken. We were Julian and Alara Thorne. That night, in the beautiful villa that was finally, truly our home, I locked him out in the courtyard. I leaned against the door, my arms folded, and called out through the wood. Julian Thorne, I demand an explanation. I heard his confused shuffle on the other side. Alara, what's wrong? Open the door, my love. Why, I said, pitching my voice to Carrie, do people say you have messy relationships with women? That you hit them? There was a long silence. Then a sound that was half groan, half laugh. Oh, that. Alara, it's not what it sounds like. I'm listening. We were on a special undercover mission, he said, his voice earnest through the door. The organization made us pose as couples to investigate a ring of enemy spies. A few of my teammates, well, they had to cross-dress as women. Once they got in costume, they thought it was hilarious. They kept trying to kiss me during the op to break my cover. I thought it was disgusting and unprofessional, so I beat the crap out of them. After the mission was over, of course. He paused. Comrade leader, I'm innocent. Please let me in. I don't want to sleep alone on our wedding night. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. The sheer absurdity of it, the utterly Julian nature of the explanation, broke the last of the day's tension. But before I could even reach for the lock, the door swung inward. He'd picked it. Of course he had. He stood there, a mischievous grin on his face. Thanks for trusting me, leader, he whispered, swooping me into his arms and carrying me over the threshold. And here's more good news, he said, laying me gently on the bed. I spoke with the military hospital in the capital. The top surgeons there say your leg can fully recover. There's a new procedure. We'll head there for treatment in a few days. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. I already spoke with the new head of the arts ensemble too. He said your placement has always been held open. You can return whenever you're ready. Overwhelmed with joy, with love, with the sheer magnitude of the future he was offering me, I pulled him down and kissed him again and again. That, it seemed, was all the encouragement he needed. The soldier's control finally snapped. The night was long and tender, and filled with a passion that promised to burn away all the shadows of the past. Inside our house, the air was thick with warmth, love, and the boundless happiness of a new beginning, hard-won and fiercely protected. The weeks that followed our tumultuous wedding were a study in contrast. The horror of Kalen's attack was a fresh wound, but it was slowly being bandaged by the quiet, steady routine of married life and the glowing ember of hope Julian had reignited in me. The capital's military hospital was a world away from our city clinic. White, sterile, and buzzing with efficiency. The surgeons, stern-faced men with kind eyes, examined my leg with a focused intensity that was both daunting and reassuring. The break was severe, the lead surgeon said, pointing to the detailed x-rays. And it was set under less than ideal circumstances, with significant emotional duress affecting the healing process. He glanced at Julian, who stood at my side like a granite sentinel. But the bone is strong. There is significant scar tissue and nerve damage, but it's not irreversible. He outlined a brutal regimen of surgery followed by months of intensive physical therapy. It will hurt, he said bluntly. It will be frustrating. There will be days you want to give up. But if you are determined, Miss Vance, Mrs. Thorne, there is no medical reason you cannot dance again. Tears of pure, unadulterated hope welled in my eyes. I looked at Julian. His hand tightened around mine, his own eyes suspiciously bright. She's the most determined person I know, he said, his voice thick with pride. The surgery was successful. The recovery was every bit as painful and frustrating as promised. There were days I lay in the hospital bed, my legs screaming in agony, and wept with the sheer effort of it all. But Julian was there. Every single day. He read to me, he made the nurses laugh, he learned the physiotherapy exercises so he could help me through them when the therapists weren't there. He was my rock, my cheerleader, my unwavering support system. During those long hours we talked. We talked about everything. Our childhoods, our dreams, our fears. I told him about the memory that had surfaced during the wedding. The memory of him saving me from the traffickers. He was quiet for a long time. I wondered if you'd ever remember, he said softly, staring out the hospital window. I found you by accident. I was in a bad place back then. Getting into fights. I heard a commotion in an old warehouse and went to investigate. I saw them and I saw you. He shook his head, the memory still vivid and painful. I lost control. I've never fought like that before or since. I was so scared I was too late. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my heart aching for the lonely, fierce boy he had been. He gave a wry smile. By the time I'd dealt with them and came to check on you, you were unconscious. I carried you out, but then I saw the police lights. I saw Kalen running up looking so worried. I was just a troublemaker from the wrong side of the compound. He was the golden boy. He's right. That he should be the hero. I thought you'd be happier with him. He looked at me, his gaze full of a decades-old regret. I was wrong. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I reached for his hand. You came back for me in the end, I whispered. That's all that matters. As my body grew stronger, so did our bond. We were discharged from the capital and returned home. My parents fussed over us, their relief at having me whole and happy palpable. The city felt different too. The shadow of Kalen Moss was gone. His trial had been swift. The evidence against him for the double murder was overwhelming. He was convicted and sentenced to death. He never offered a defense, never showed a flicker of remorse. He was a shell, emptied of everything but his obsession. I refused his last request to see me. A few days after his sentence was carried out, a plain, sealed envelope was delivered to our house. It contained a single sheet of paper with a few scrawled lines. If there's another life, I swear I'll love only you. Trust only you. When I'm reborn, I'll come back to be with you and only you. I felt nothing. No anger, no fear, no pity. Just a hollow emptiness. I rolled my eyes and tossed the letter straight into the trash. He had consumed enough of my lifetimes. Unfortunately, Julian saw it. He'd come home early hoping to surprise me. He fished the letter out of the bin, his face darkening as he read it. The jealousy that flared in his eyes was instantaneous and volcanic. 1,000 vinegar jars exploding at once. He didn't say anything. He just crumpled the paper in his fist and stalked out of the room. For the rest of the evening he was quiet, brooding. He was polite, helpful, but a distance had opened up between us. The insecure boy who believed I'd only married him for protection was back. I let him stew for a bit, amused and a little touched by his possessiveness. Later that night as we lay in bed I turned to him, tracing the line of his jaw. You know, I said softly, in every lifetime in every world there is only you, Julian Thorne. He was a mistake I won't make again. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine in the moonlight. Then a slow, relieved smile spread across his face. He pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. Good, he muttered into my hair. Because I'm not letting you go. Not in this life or any other. The next phase of my recovery began. Returning to the arts ensemble. I was terrified. My leg was stronger, but it was still weak. I walked with barely a limp now, but dancing? That was a different language altogether. Julian drove me to the ensemble headquarters on my first day back. The new director, a stern but fair woman who had replaced the disgraced Croft, greeted me warmly. Welcome back, Mrs. Thorne. Your spot has been waiting for you. The studio was both familiar and alien. The bars, the mirrors, the smell of resin and sweat. It was home. But my body was a stranger. I was clumsy, my movements hesitant. The muscle memory was there, but the strength and flexibility were not. I stumbled during a simple ply, my bad leg buckling under me. A wave of hot shame washed over me. I saw the other dancers exchange pitying glances. The prima ballerina, broken. I wanted to quit. To run away and never come back. But then I thought of Julian's face when the surgeon said I could dance again. Thought of the pigsty. I thought of Kalen who had tried to take this from me. I picked myself up. I went back to the bar. I started again. It was a slow, grueling process. Some days were victories. A balance held for a few seconds longer. A jump that didn't send a jolt of pain through my leg. Other days were failures, ending in tears of frustration on the studio floor. But I kept going. Julian would often come to pick me up, sitting quietly in the back of the studio, watching me with an expression of such fierce pride it made my heart ache. He never offered empty praise. He'd just say, "Your arabesque was higher today," or, I saw you hold that turn. Looked strong. His belief in me was a constant, quiet force that propelled me forward. Months turned into a year. The limp vanished completely. The strength returned, different than before, less lithe, more powerful. My dancing changed. It lost some of its former effortless grace but gained a new depth, a raw emotion born of pain and survival. I wasn't the same dancer I had been. I was better. I was given a solo in the Winter Showcase. A piece about resilience, about rising from the ashes. It was my story. The night of the performance, I stood in the wings, my heart pounding. I looked into the audience. My parents were there, beaming. And in the front row, sitting ramrod straight in his dress uniform, was Julian. His eyes were fixed on me, a lighthouse in my storm of nerves. The music began. I walked onto the stage. And I danced. I danced for the girl I had been, for the woman I had become, for the man who had waited for me across 2 lifetimes. I poured every ounce of pain, love, loss, and hope into the movement. When the music ended, there was a moment of utter silence. Then the audience erupted. They rose to their feet as one, their applause thunderous, overwhelming. I stood there, chest heaving, tears streaming down my face, taking it in. My eyes found Julian. He was still seated, but he was clapping harder than anyone, his own face wet with tears. He mouthed 2 words. My wife. That was the only review I needed. After the performance, surrounded by well-wishers and bouquets of flowers, the director pulled me aside. Alara, that was extraordinary. We've been invited to perform at the National Arts Festival in the spring. I want you to lead the company. It was everything I had ever worked for. Everything I had thought lost forever. I accepted, my joy so complete it felt like a physical thing. Life settled into a new, beautiful rhythm. My career flourished. Julian's career soared. His leadership and bravery were recognized with further promotions. We were the city's golden couple, but it was a title earned through survival, not privilege. We built a life filled with simple, profound happiness. Lazy Sunday mornings in our sun-drenched kitchen. Long walks through the city parks, his hand firmly holding mine. Silly arguments over burnt dinners. Tender nights wrapped in each other's arms. The past was not forgotten. The scars, both physical and emotional, remained. But they no longer defined us. They were reminders of the battles we had fought and won together. One evening we were having dinner with my parents. My father, a little more gray-haired but with a peace I hadn't seen in years, raised his glass. To my daughter, he said, his voice warm. The finest dancer in the country. And to my son, he added, clinking his glass against Julian's. The man who finally made her see sense. We all laughed. The sound was light, easy, filled with a love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger. Later, as Julian and I walked home under a canopy of stars, he stopped me, pulling me into his arms. You're happy, he stated, searching my face. I am, I said, and it was the profound truth. So happy it almost scares me. Don't be scared, he whispered, kissing my forehead. This is just the beginning, Alara. Our beginning. And as I stood there, wrapped in the arms of my husband under the vast starry sky, I knew he was right. The tragedy of my past life was finally, completely over. The future was ours to write, and it was brighter than I had ever dared to dream. The years, as they do for the happy, began to blur together in a beautiful sun-drenched montage. 5 years after my return to the stage, I made the difficult decision to retire from performing. My leg, though strong, couldn't withstand the relentless punishment of a prima ballerina's schedule. But the ensemble wouldn't let me go. The director, now a dear friend, offered me a position as artistic director. I accepted, my passion for dance finding a new outlet in guiding the next generation of talent. Julian continued to rise through the military ranks, his reputation for integrity and strategic brilliance earning him respect and command. He was often away for training exercises or high-level meetings, but he always returned home to me, his anchor. Our reunions were always sweet, filled with the quiet intensity of a love that had been tested by time and distance. We talked about children. It was a tender subject. The memory of the child I had lost in my first life was a quiet, private grief we both carried. The doctors said the trauma, both physical and emotional, might make it difficult. We decided not to force it. If it happened, it would be a miracle. If not, we had each other, and that was more than enough. Our lives were full. We traveled when we could, we built a wide circle of friends, we cherished our families. My parents doted on us, and Julian, who had lost his own parents so tragically, embraced them as his own. 10 years after our wedding, I noticed a change in Julian. He became more thoughtful, more nostalgic. He'd hold me a little longer in the mornings. His gaze would linger on me with a deeper, more poignant tenderness. I thought it was just a natural deepening of our bond, the comfortable silence of a long marriage. I was wrong. He came home one evening with a mysterious smile and a small wrapped box. "For you," he said, his eyes twinkling. I opened it. Inside, on a bed of velvet, was a key. Not a house key. A larger, older key. "What's this?" I asked, confused. "Put on your coat," he said, that mischievous grin I loved so much spreading across his face. "I'm kidnapping you." He drove us out of the city toward the rolling hills on the outskirts. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. He finally pulled up to a gated property overlooking a serene lake. A beautiful, modern house made of glass and stone stood there, but it wasn't finished. Construction materials were neatly stacked to the side. "Julian, what is this?" "Our project," he said, taking my hand and leading me to the front door. He used the key I held to unlock it. "I bought the land 2 years ago. I've been designing it piece by piece in my spare time. With a little help from your father." The interior was a shell, but I could see the vision. Large, open spaces flooded with light. A studio with mirrored walls and a bar overlooking the lake. A garden designed for running and playing. A home built not just for two but for a family. Tears filled my eyes. "It's beautiful. It's for us," he said, his voice soft. "For our future. For however we choose to fill it." He led me to the biggest window, overlooking the water where the last of the sun was dipping below the horizon. "I never had a real home growing up, Alara. You are my home. But I wanted to build one for you. A fresh start with no ghosts." I turned in his arms, kissing him with all the love and gratitude that was overflowing in my heart. "It's perfect." We threw ourselves into the project. Designing the house became our shared passion. We argued over tile samples and paint swatches. We picnicked on the unfinished floor, dreaming of Christmases and birthdays to come. It was a tangible symbol of our future, being built with our own hands and hearts. It was during this time that I started to feel different. Tired. Nauseous in the mornings. I blamed the stress of the build and my work. But a week later, when the smell of Julian's coffee made me bolt for the bathroom, a wild, impossible hope began to flutter in my chest. I bought a test, my hands shaking so badly I could barely open the box. The 2 pink lines appeared instantly. I sat on the bathroom floor, laughing and crying at the same time. The miracle. It was happening. I didn't tell Julian right away. I wanted it to be perfect. I waited until we were at the new house, standing in what would be the nursery, the evening sun streaming through the unfinished window frame. I took his hand and placed it on my still flat stomach. His eyes widened, confusion giving way to dawning, disbelieving comprehension. "Alara," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Are you?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "The doctor confirmed it this morning. We're going to have a baby, Julian." The sound he made was half sob, half laugh of pure, unadulterated joy. He dropped to his knees right there on the dusty subfloor, wrapped his arms around my waist and pressed his face against my stomach, his shoulders shaking. He looked up at me, his face radiant, transformed by a happiness so profound it was blinding. "A baby," he breathed as if it were the most sacred word in the world. The pregnancy was not easy. I was older and my body bore the scars of past trauma. There were scares, weeks of bed rest and constant monitoring. Julian was a nervous wreck, hovering over me, reading every parenting book he could find, driving the doctors crazy with his questions. But through it all, his love was a constant, steady force. He attended every appointment, he rubbed my aching feet, he talked to my belly every night, telling our child stories about the brave, beautiful mother they were going to have. Finally, after a long and difficult labor, our daughter came into the world. She was small, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that already seemed to hold the wisdom of the ages. We named her Lily for the flower that symbolizes resilience and renewal, a promise of a new beginning untainted by the past. Holding her in my arms for the first time, looking into Julian's tear-filled eyes, I felt a circle complete. The pain, the loss, the struggle, It all melted away in the face of this perfect new life. We had not just survived, we had created. Life with a newborn was a chaotic, beautiful whirlwind. The new house was finished just in time, and we moved in, filling its bright, airy rooms with baby laughter and the smell of warmed milk. My parents were doting grandparents, spoiling Lily rotten. Julian was a natural father. The fierce, hardened soldier melted into a pile of goo the moment his daughter curled her tiny hand around his finger. He changed diapers with the precision of a bomb disposal expert, sang off-key lullabies, and could often be found asleep in the rocking chair with Lily snoozing on his chest. One afternoon I was watching them from the doorway of the nursery. Julian was on the floor making ridiculous faces to make Lily giggle. The sight of this strong, powerful man, reduced to a puddle of love by a 10-pound baby, filled my heart with a joy so intense it was almost painful. He looked up and saw me watching, a soft smile on his face. "She has your eyes," he said. "And your stubbornness," I replied, laughing as Lily let out a determined squeal. He got up and came to me, wrapping his arms around both of us. We stood there, the three of us, a perfect, complete unit. A family. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair. "For what?" "For choosing me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For trusting me. For giving me this." He looked down at Lily, then back at me, his gaze full of a love that spanned lifetimes. "You saved me, Alara. In every way that matters, you saved me." I reached up and cupped his face, my thumb stroking the faint scar on his cheek. A souvenir from a long-ago fight, a lifetime ago. We saved each other, Julian. Years turned into decades. Lily grew up strong and willful, with her father's courage and her mother's grace. She had no patience for ballet, preferring to climb trees and study engineering, and we loved her all the more for it. Our home was always filled with her friends, with laughter, with life. We grew older. Silver streaked our hair, lines etched themselves on our faces. My legs sometimes ached in the cold, a permanent reminder of all we had overcome. Julian's back, once straight and unbending, developed a slight stoop. But our love never aged. It deepened, matured, became a comfortable, worn-in sweater that kept us warm against the chill of time. We still held hands on our walks around the lake. He still brought me coffee in bed every morning. I still caught him looking at me sometimes with that same awestruck expression he'd had on our wedding day. On our 60th wedding anniversary, our family, Lily, her husband, our two gorgeous grandchildren, threw us a huge party in the garden of our home by the lake. It was filled with love and laughter, the legacy we had built together. That night, after everyone had left, Julian and I sat on the porch swing, watching the moon rise over the water. His hand, gnarled and spotted with age, held mine tightly. 60 years, he said, his voice raspy with age but still familiar, still his. "It feels like a heartbeat. It feels like 1,000 lifetimes," I corrected softly, leaning my head on his shoulder. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you remember that letter? The one he wrote?" I didn't have to ask who he meant. "Yes. You know," Julian said, a familiar, playful jealousy still tinting his words even after all these years. "For the next 60 years I think I'll need you to promise me again. In every lifetime, in every world, you'll love only me." I laughed, a soft, contented sound. I lifted our joined hands and kissed his knuckles. "You ridiculous, wonderful man. I promise. In every lifetime, in every world, it has always been you, Julian Thorne. It always will be." He smiled, a slow, satisfied smile that still made my heart skip a beat. He pulled me closer and we sat there in comfortable silence, watching the moon's reflection dance on the water, two souls who had found each other across the chaos of time, and built a love that would endure forever. The end.